Gretzy, thanks for
Hello,
joining me.
pleasure.
How are you?
I am fantastic. How are you doing?
Very well, mate. Very well. There's a few things I want to talk to you about today. For one, you've had a pretty wild life.
A little bit, yeah, a little bit wild.
Um, Not the usual upbringing, not the usual situation in life with kids and family and things like that. And I kind of want to dig a bit deeper into it because I know that you talk about it on stream, but
Yes.
you don't deep dive into it. It's more just like a sliding comment that you make about it. And I thought it would be quite interesting story for people that watch you and people that don't even watch you to actually hear it.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I don't usually dive into it on Twitch because it's like not necessarily something that everyone wants to listen to. So I sort of,
Yep.
I just sort of slide across it nice and evenly and just it's been a bit rough, but other than that, that's where it sort of usually ends.
Yeah. That makes sense. Like you're there to give people a good time, right? So
Yeah,
the vibe is
exactly. I don't want
kind
to bring
of
it down too much.
yeah. But to me, it's not bringing anything down. I don't see it as um, I don't see it as something that should be brought down. I think it's because of the person you are, and I've known you for 2 years now, and the person you are, I think you became that person because of everything that you've been through.
Yeah. Well, that's what I've over the years I've learned is to take the hard times and turn them into positives and use those to build me as a person
Yeah,
and to hopefully be able to help other people around me.
definitely. So I'm going to read your Twitch bio.
Yes.
Gamer dad from Australia,
Yes.
father of two autistic boys, one of whom has apraxia.
Yep.
And correct me if I've said that wrong.
No, that's perfect.
I also suffer from permanent hearing loss in one of my ears due to a childhood accident,
Yep.
and video games is something I've always loved. I hope I can enjoy my streams.
Yep.
All right, so let's go back to the first thing hearing loss, right?
Yep.
As a kid.
Yes.
Tell me about your upbringing because it is, to me, it's very fascinating, probably because I didn't live it,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
it is fascinating. So I want to talk to me about like your upbringing and your parents and like how they were with you and disciplines and things like that, because I know you kind of touch on it in stream saying like the hippies.
Yeah. Yes, they were. So basically, I grew up in Brisbane. Well, outside Brisbane, up in the mountains. Um, Mum and dad, they basically had me, and then about 6 months, 6 to 9 months, somewhere around there, mum left. And so I basically was just me and dad.
Yep.
Um, and like a lot of stuff happened there, but it was all sort of stuff that I never really understood, obviously, as a child,
Yeah,
because I was a child
of
and didn't
course.
really know about until I sort of got older. And it was sort of, yeah, it was like, so I spent like pretty much up until I was about 7 with just dad.
Yep.
And I sort of was like, oh, okay, this is, very different.
Mm.
Um, I don't really like I remember it, but I don't remember a lot of it. I remember it as good times and stuff like that. But basically, yeah, dad was sort of very laid back. Like he was very much he used to do a lot of drugs.
Yep.
Not sort of like hard drugs, but more
Yeah.
like, marijuana.
Hippie
uh,
drugs.
Yeah, hippie drugs,
Yep.
yeah, pretty much
I mean, it was the
mushrooms.
80s, right?
Yeah, yep. It was 80s, so I was born in 85.
So
And
that's the time for
yeah, it
that
was
type of
very
thing.
much free love
Yep.
and was well and truly and just experimenting.
Yep.
And he was an artist, so he used to do sculpture, he did plasticine animation, he did wood sculpture animation.
Yep.
He was very much a what's the word, like he was an artist, but he was sort of ahead of what was actually happening.
Happening at the time.
Yeah, like he was like, he'd do stop motion, which like the stuff you see in like Wallace and
Yeah.
Gromit, but he
S-
was doing it before then. So
Yeah. So he
it was,
he, he was kind of already experimenting I
Yeah.
mean, not just physically and mentally and things like that with what he was doing, but he was also doing it career wise and trying to be ahead of the pack.
Yes. Yeah, he was, but he sort of he never wanted to take that step sort of to where it was more than just art. Like I remember he took a trip to Sydney from Brisbane, and he went and saw the ABC, and he pitched a an idea of a animation to him, which was basically around a guy who would just sort of do little adventures. So back then you would get like little filler shows, which were
Yeah.
like, sort of 2 to 3 minutes, and that was a little story.
Yeah.
And they knocked him back. They
Hmm.
said that it wasn't something that people would be interested in.
Hmm.
And I think that affected him a lot because it was suddenly like a sort of, a wall was put up as to, I don't want to sort of go
Down that path.
mainstream. Yeah, I want to stay very
Yeah.
private. So he was a very private man.
I mean that kind of makes sense because especially artists can be very emotional.
Yes,
Being a creative, you can be very emotional,
very, very much so.
and rejection is something that some people can deal with,
Yeah.
but it also can affect someone very negatively, like your father,
Yep.
where they almost don't want anything to do with it anymore.
Yes, this is very true. He was very much, he didn't like people saying that they didn't like something
Yeah.
that he'd put obviously a lot of time into. He was definitely a damaged man,
Yeah.
like as far as like just his upbringing. I don't know a lot about it. He didn't talk about it a lot,
Yeah.
but there was definitely a lot of stuff there that would have made someone saying, "Hey, I don't like that," or "There's no potential for that."
Yeah.
It would have hit him really hard, and
Very
it did.
hard.
Like I remember him like breaking things
Mm.
um, that people would say, "Oh, I don't like that," so he just smashed the sculpture.
Well, I
And
mean, if it had to do with his past as a kid, getting left behind is very mentally one draining and socially awkward
yes,
for that child in further life. If they're very distant from other children and things like that, or if they've been, you know, neglected or picked on, it can be very hurtful and
yes,
damaging.
yep. So my dad's side of the family, they're always very open to people like being different.
Hmm.
As far as you don't have to sort of go down the university line, or
Yeah.
pretty much all of my family, not all, like, but three of them are well and truly, my aunts and uncles are like, one of them, like, he makes woodwork
Yeah.
for a living. That's what he does. He makes picture frames and does stuff like that. Another one sort of has just always sort of been working on the farm and stuff. So it's not
Yeah.
really like they were sort of like, had to be university and had to be this,
Yeah.
but he always sort of, like I've always said, he was very much a hermit. Um,
Yep.
he very much was very not any social. He just kept to himself a lot. He
Homebound.
Yeah, he liked to travel, but it was more he would go out and just spend that time by himself. It
Yeah.
was like, I want to go and visit these places. I want to paint them.
Yeah.
I want to create, and I want to do it predominantly by
By
myself.
myself.
Yeah,
Okay. So that takes you up to, you said, around the age of 7ish,
yeah,
right?
yep.
So did he get partners? Like, did he ever have partners along
Yeah,
the
he
way
did.
after
He
that?
did. He had one that I remember, which I didn't get along with.
Yep.
I don't know. I found it. I was very much a wild sort of child. Yeah, very angry child. I felt alone a lot of the time.
Yeah.
Like even though dad was there and like we had good times, it was like I felt very empty
Yeah.
as a person. I had a lot of sort of, I like some people say I get really angry, but I would say it was rage.
Okay.
Like I was very much
Was there things that triggered it? Was it
yeah,
like,
there was a lot of stuff. So I mean, and I don't talk about it a lot because of the fact that like some people find it hard, and like even I've had times where it's hard to sort of express the fact that like I mean we're gonna get deep, and I'm okay with that. Like I'm okay.
whatever you want to talk about?
I just don't really talk about it on
No, that's fine.
stream because I know that people find it hard. But as a child, I used to have like I guess you would say like flashbacks and sort of like weird like dreams and stuff where I
Yeah.
was like I couldn't really explain it,
Mm-hmm.
but it felt like my dad,
Mm-hmm.
whom to this day I still have amazing memories of,
Yeah.
but he had treated me inappropriately.
Yeah.
And I was sort of like, okay, like I don't really understand this. We're talking like, where like touched me in
Yeah.
places
Yeah.
that, your father isn't supposed to touch you.
So
Yet,
were
you
those
know,
flashbacks? Were you trying to figure out if they were real?
yes. So up and like even into my teens, I looked back and I was like, is this something that I just imagined
Yeah.
or something that, which, as a, obviously, a young child, you sort of go, well, why would I even be imagining that? It doesn't
Yeah.
even make sense.
Of course.
And I remember the place where we lived, and I remember the place where I was sort of seeing these things.
Yeah.
I mean, I left there when I was like 2, 3
Yeah.
years old at the most. So it was sort of very hard for me to go, okay, is this actually something that is a real thing?
Yeah.
Is this just my strange way of dealing with
Dealing
things?
with emotions and trying to get it out with
Yeah.
anger and some like
Yep.
trying to give some hatred some way.
Yes. So
Yeah.
I had like it was very weird because obviously I then had the opposite side of that where I had amazing memories with my dad,
That
like
person.
where we went on trips together, we went and painted together, we would sit and just enjoy time together.
Yeah.
And yet there was that side, and then there was the other side where it was like, is this person
That person.
who I think they
Mm.
actually are?
So you said you went away painting and things like that. I know that you're an artist because I've seen some of your work. You don't really show it often, but I've
No.
seen some stuff that you do. So when did that all kind of start, painting or drawing and things like that?
Uh, Pretty much from day one.
Day one?
I Yeah, I mean, dad always was an artist.
Yeah.
That's what he'd done forever. So it was like, I guess, just I'd just copy.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah.
he'd be sitting there drawing, doing watercolor, so I'd sit there and draw and do watercolor.
Yeah.
And it wasn't really I don't think I ever remember a point where I didn't do that sort of stuff. And the people that were around dad at the time, they were all also obviously very arty and
Yeah.
very much it was just everybody
Everything
did
was
art.
art. Yeah.
Everything was art, whether it be, you know, like oil painting or watercolors or, it was very much that's what they did.
Yeah.
And they obviously, they would experiment with all different sorts of things because they were mostly off their trees on all
Mm.
sorts of drugs and everything like that. But that was the life. That's
Yeah.
what I grew up around all the time.
So growing up around that side and seeing your father do drugs and things like that, did you think growing up and going to school and things like that that it was a normal thing? Like, did you think that other families that was happening?
I wasn't really sure because like early on, like I started school and it was just I never really felt like I fit in
Mm.
school. So probably, I guess subconsciously, I would say I sort of definitely was like, oh, this is very, very different.
Yeah.
We are, we're talking the 80s, and like I don't really remember having a lot of friends,
Yeah.
like even sort of pushing through. Like most of the people I hung around, they're all older,
Mm.
they're all adults. Like there wouldn't even, yeah, it was predominantly like I would spend most of my time
Are we
around
talking
adults.
teachers or like dad's friends or
My dad's friends
dad's
and
friends?
and people on the farm
Yep.
that we lived on at that time when I went to school. It was like pretty much always, like I remember sitting around and playing like canasta and stuff
Yep.
as like a 6-year-old. Like it was, so I'd sit up till I don't know what time, and they'd sort of all just be drinking and smoking weed and stuff, and then that was just like, oh yeah, this is what we're doing. Like we're just playing some cards, and
So as a kid, no bedtime, nothing like that?
there were at times. So at times, there was bedtime. Some of my fondest memories are around that. Like, Dad would read me stories
Yep.
and stuff like that. I didn't have a television
Yep.
until a while. Like,
A lot of people didn't know those times.
yeah, like we didn't have TV. If I did get to watch TV, it was only when we were on the farm,
Yep.
and that was basically you'd watch a little bit of like ABC and Doctor Who and that sort of stuff. It was the news. It wasn't really like it is now, where there's so much different sort of television. It's very different to what it was when I was growing up.
So going to school, did you go to a school in a city? Did you go to a school in a small place?
Country
Country?
town.
Small
Yep.
school?
Uh, yeah, I remember it being relatively small.
Yeah.
I went to, I think it was about 3 in the first sort of 12 to 18 months.
Yep.
Which I mean, one of them I know why, but the others I'm not really sure. I went to one school and obviously I just didn't fit in there.
Yep.
And so I got moved to a Steiner school, which I did probably about 6 months, and then we moved onto a boat and lived out on the ocean. And so school then was on an island. So
Okay.
yeah,
Alrighty. So pause right there.
yeah,
When you say you moved onto a boat,
yeah.
who moved onto a boat?
My dad and I, he decided that a fun project would be buying a boat. So he bought a boat and we worked on it for about 12 months. And
How
then
big is this boat?
a yacht.
A yacht. Okay.
Yeah, it was wasn't sails, it was motor.
Yep.
Maybe 30 feet, I don't know.
Yep.
Yeah. I mean, it felt freaking massive as a child.
Of course.
But yeah, like it would have been big enough for it at a family.
Yeah.
So he basically launched it and we moved out into Moreton Bay.
So what age was this around?
This was like grade 1, so I would have been like 6.
Okay.
This is when sort of I was having a great time because I was out in the boat. It
Of
was,
course.
you'd wake up in the morning, you'd have your breakfast, you'd jump in the dinghy,
Yeah.
and you'd row to shore, and then you'd go to school, finish school, come back, jump in the dinghy, go back out onto the boat, and you'd fish and swim and have a great time. It was
Of course. That sounds like one of the best times as a kid,
yeah,
really.
it was very good, but I think that was around the time where Mum and him started to sort of have, I guess, different opinions on how I should be brought up. So yeah, it was kind of a weird, like I even like remember it as a child being strange, like just feeling strange.
Yeah.
Like I started to go, like I always went and saw her, but not very frequently. But then it sort of got more frequently as I got sort of around that 6, 7-year-old mark.
And then, so from that age, did you see her more frequently? As in, like, was it like weekends, weeks, months at a time?
I feel like it was probably weekends, but like fortnightly, maybe
Yep.
monthly. Yeah.
And
I'd sort of
how
go
long
on
did
a
that
day.
last?
Yeah, so we'd go. Yeah, sort of. I don't know exactly. It's hard to remember, but like I remember going.
years or short
Yeah,
period?
yeah, like until I was 8, and basically when I was like, or 7.5, 8, was when Dad was just like, you need to go live with your mum. And I sort of was like, oh, okay. I was actually in New Zealand with him. His partner at the time, she was from New Zealand.
Yeah.
We went over to New Zealand. It was great, you know. I mean, it's a beautiful country. I'm there going, wow, this is amazing. And Dad was like, you need to go and live with your mum. And I was like, oh. So we were there at Christmas time. We were there for like 3 months. And he's like, you need, this is what's happening. And I was like, oh, okay. I didn't really feel like I had a choice in the matter. It was
Yeah.
just like, and I said, oh, don't you want me here? He said, oh, it's not that. It's just, I need you to go live with your
Yeah.
mum. And I was like, oh, okay. So, basically he put me on a plane, from New Zealand, and sent me back to Australia, as a 7-year-old. Yeah.
So coming back to Australia, living with your mum,
Yeah. So mum had a
um,
partner who I
di-
hated.
different morals, as in hippies,
Um,
like,
by this stage, yes.
mm,
She was she was a bit crazy. Like I went from like dad who was like he was very arty and very sort of, but he wasn't out there, you know,
mm,
like he was just a very relaxed, calm sort of person. Obviously there were issues with it. Like there was
yeah,
issues. I mean, he had obviously issues, a lot of issues personally, and a lot of demons and a lot of monsters hidden and
yeah,
stuff like that. But he went I went from that, and then I went to my mum, who was like trying to sort of come out of the other end of that sort of
yeah,
um like hippie
craziness,
stage.
yeah,
Yeah. And so she was sort of like, she was very strict, but
yeah,
not strict as far as like discipline, just in, you know, it was like this has to happen and this has to happen.
yeah,
And I definitely felt like it was a massive switch in change for me personally. I went from like being allowed to sort of express myself to no longer being allowed to express myself. And
mm,
it was honestly a very hard time. She had a partner who I I didn't get along with. He
yep,
was he was um he was a panel beater,
yep,
which that was a side of the world I'd never experienced.
yep,
Um he was rough. He was very angry. He'd yell a lot. And going from like softly spoken sort of
male figure,
household to that was a very much a like, whoa, okay, what's
yep,
going on? They actually got married. It didn't last long, but he was very much a like, this is how it's done. This is the way you will do as I say.
yeah.
And I didn't like that at all. Um,
I mean, coming from being able to do whatever you want to not being able to do whatever you want is a big change, and of course, especially as a kid, not understanding everything, that's how you're
yep,
going to feel.
yep. And you know, there was the expectation of, hey, you call him dad, and I was like, I'm not calling him dad.
Yeah,
He's not my dad. My dad made obviously a lot of mistakes, like a lot of mistakes, and a lot of them, yeah, they probably, you know, they've torn a lot of family apart,
yep,
and you know, but it was very much for me as a child. It was just I never really knew how to handle myself
mm,
emotionally. It was like I didn't really have, like, you know, some kids are sort of level.
yeah,
Me, it was just like I'm just boom,
yep,
like I'm up here in this like massive
just
like
chaos.
chaos. Yeah, like I was a chaotic child.
Yeah.
Like I would have been hard to handle for anyone.
And
Like
how long do you think that lasted? Like, was that until, high school or
probably 16, 17.
16? Yeah, and at that point, did you like? Was there something that changed it? Was it
I
you
met Jess.
yourself,
I met Jess.
Jess? You met
Yep, Jess
Jess.
and her
All right,
family.
so let's talk about Jess.
Yeah,
So you say you met Jess and everything changed.
yeah, pretty much. Well, it wasn't like just her, but it was her family. It
Mm,
was like I went from I was always in trouble,
yeah.
a lot.
Mm,
Like I was very violent.
Mm.
but mostly towards myself, if that makes sense.
Yep.
Self-harm was huge.
Yep.
I would do, self-harm before self-harm was
A
not
thing.
to sound wrong, but a thing,
Yep.
like where it was sort of mainstream as, I know it sounds terrible because
Yeah.
obviously it isn't mainstream and it shouldn't be, but
Well, it did go through
as,
that period, right? When I was in
yeah,
high school, that emo
yes, yeah. So
phase.
this was well and truly before that. Like I
Yeah.
was, like still in primary school, but I was, like 12 and it started there. Like there
Yep.
was a lot of hurt, a lot of still like having these flashbacks to like what happened,
Happened.
not knowing. Yeah, it was, and so when like I sort of ended up like in high school, it was just like fighting. I'd fight, fought all my way through.
Just drop of a hat.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I mean, someone flicked a lid off a glue stick at me in class, and I just turned around and went at them.
Yeah.
Like most kids would be like, "Well, stop it,"
Yeah.
This.
Yeah.
I just turned around and jumped on him, and just kept going. And that's in school, and it was,
Yeah.
yeah, it was very much. I was very angry and very short fused, and I didn't really care like about consequence. It was
Yeah.
like, if I go to jail, so be it.
Yeah.
You know,
So,
it's like
and you say Jess and her family changed that. Now, like, was that her trying to calm you down, or was it you wanting to be better for her and her family? Was it?
I think it was both.
Mm.
When Jess and I first met, we met at church, and of a lot of stuff at this time. So I was there for a while, and
So I'll hold
I
you
was
there.
still,
You met
yeah,
at church.
yes, yeah.
Who was religious in your family to be going to church?
By this stage, my mother was, but I sort of would laugh about it because mm, mum basically went through every, like, you name a religion or
Yeah.
a philosophy, she
Yeah.
did it like
Okay.
100%. Like,
So nothing stuck.
no, nothing stuck. So she started going here, and it was like, probably 6 months that she went to this church, which was Jess's parents' church.
Okay.
And I like, she'd say, "Oh, come," and I'd be like, "I'm not going to. I'm not interested in that, like, at all.
Yeah.
That doesn't fit my my beliefs of who I am."
Yeah.
And it was just like pretty much anything that she did, I was against.
Mm.
I didn't like it, and then one day I woke up on a Sunday morning early. Like normally I'd be sort of up all night and stuff like that. And I woke up on a Sunday morning, and for whatever reason, I just went with her. Um, she hadn't asked, she hadn't said anything. Um, and I walked in there and to the church, and I met like Jess, which I knew Jess. I'd seen her around at school because I got sent, basically the only school that would take me
Yeah.
was private Christian school.
Mm-hmm.
Every other school was like, "Nah, you're way too high risk."
Yeah.
Um, I had a bad file, and I walked in there, and it was like they just didn't care um, who I was, or didn't really sort of. They weren't worried about, I guess, the risk,
Yeah.
the anger, the stuff that I saw, and
Mm. So is this
I
the church or is this the school?
this is the church,
This
yeah.
is the
The school,
church.
oh, the school cared. The school
The
cared. They
school.
didn't like me.
Okay.
Yeah, yeah, they didn't like me. I I had I had a bad reputation, and rightfully so. Rightfully so. I did a lot of stuff that
Yeah.
wasn't good.
I mean,
That that I
even
do sort of look back and definitely
yeah,
regret.
but even like like me growing up, kids had bad reps,
Yeah.
especially like going to schools like locally. Like there's 10 schools around the same area, right? If
Yep.
someone's coming to your school, you already know that they've probably been kicked out of one of the other schools because you
Yeah.
know people at the other schools.
Yep. Exactly.
So like reps
Yep.
going to follow you no matter what. So I mean, it's good that that school actually let you in.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I was let in on a very short leash.
Mm.
They basically said that if I put any foot out of line, they would expel me, and they made the mistake of not doing that.
Yeah.
I put a foot out of line just to test the waters because I
Yeah.
didn't want to be there,
Yeah.
and they didn't expel me. And it was at that moment that I knew that I could basically get away with
Oh, it
anything
was
there.
go time.
Yeah, it was go time.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
So what age did you go to that school?
that was year 9. So I
So
think I was 13,
13,
14,
14.
14. I
And
think, yeah.
then, so that wasn't, what was, and you said, was that Jess's school?
Yes. Yeah, she was a couple of years below me, though. So,
And so, and then you met at church.
yeah,
So
when
you
I was
hadn't
about,
met her at school. Did you know her at school at
nah,
all?
I'd seen her,
Okay.
like I'd seen her, but I didn't know who she was
Yeah.
or even what her name was or anything.
Yeah. So then at
Um,
16, 17, what age were you
yeah,
there when you went to
yeah,
church?
about 17, yeah.
And then you saw her there?
Yep, and I was like, "Oh, yeah," I knew who she was.
Yeah.
Like, I've seen you before. Didn't It wasn't like I like you or anything. It was
No.
just, "Oh, yeah, okay." But
Someone else knows you.
her parents and was like they were very nice to me. Um, I don't know, I like, but the time frame was very much, like I started going every week.
Mm.
It was like very much, this is, they just accept me for who I am, what I've done, what I do, how I
Mm.
behave. And I started, I guess I went, I want to change for them,
Yeah.
because they're showing me something that I never really got, which was
Yeah.
just acceptance and love.
So do you think
Um,
that's why you kept going back?
yeah, I do. I do. I do. I got involved with it. There was a way to express myself
Mm.
as far as like music and stuff like that,
Yep.
and they were just nice to me,
Yeah.
and they showed me that there was a lot more to life than having to sort of be this person that
Mm.
I had become and happily become.
Yeah.
And yeah, they just accepted me, and eventually, I was about 18, and mum decided that she needed to let the secret out. And I was like, so I came into church, and it was like a big meeting. And basically I was told that my father was, you know, a pedophile,
Okay.
um, which was like, whoa, okay. Which confirmed obviously all these thoughts
Yep.
that I'd had, as a child. I had an older half sister.
Mm-hmm.
She was about 5 years older, who he had, I don't know exactly because I still to this day don't really know. I
Yeah.
know that it wasn't like, like, as far it
The
was
full
just
thing.
inappropriate touching,
Yep.
yeah. But it confirmed obviously my, that he had done it to me as well.
Yep.
Um, in a basically a drug infused
Yep.
state, it was just like, so that was like had come out then, that was the entire reason that mum had left. And she took my sister,
Mm.
and she left me because she thought that he wouldn't do anything to
To
me,
you. Yep.
and this happened after it. So I went very angry again because I was like, how does a mother leave a child in
Knowing.
situation? And it hit pretty hard. Like, yeah, it hit me hard because it was like, okay, that's my dad. All this stuff that I've sort of thought is true,
Mm.
and yet then I have my mother who just chose to leave me there.
Since two questions based on, do you know why that period is when she came out and said it?
Um, not exactly. Not
Okay.
Yeah. I mean, there was a lot of stuff that I know that people know, but I sort of chose to stay away from it
Yep.
because it just honestly made me
Too
like
too
I felt
angry?
very dark.
Yeah.
I felt very dark, and there was talk of my sister pressing charges, which she did try to at times.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I don't speak to my sister.
Okay.
I don't speak to my mum either.
Mm-hmm.
There's too much there.
Yeah,
It's
fair enough.
just I always felt with them, um, whether it was right or wrong, and whether I was right or whether I was wrong, I don't know. But I always felt with them that it was like I was like the black sheep, the we're stuck with him sort of in the
Yeah.
family. It was like, always the reminder because I look a lot like my dad.
Mm.
Um, I mean, I don't know if that's true,
Yeah.
but that's
Just
definitely like
feelings, how
how
you
I
felt.
felt the entire time
Yeah.
growing up, in that house. So
So, what age did that happen? Like, did your mum?
I think I was about 18.
So you're
Yeah.
about 18. So,
Yeah.
at what point you were living with your mum? At what point did that stop?
Um, well, I moved out. Um,
At 18?
uh, in year 11, I left
Yeah.
basically, and I went and lived with Jess's parents. Not officially, but I was there basically all the time.
Were you and Jess together then,
No,
or so
no,
you weren't even together then? They just
no.
took you on
Yep, they took me in.
because they're good people.
Yep, because they're good people. They took me in. Um, I would go and hang out there on the weekends when I wasn't at school. It
Mm.
was just like it was a safe place. I felt like I could be myself there.
What a
And
just what an amazing like that's two amazing people.
yeah, I
One,
mean,
they
they helped me. They taught me. They,
but not
you know,
only that, they knew your past, as in fighting,
yep,
anger, things like that,
yep,
and they left it away to take you on and parent you and try and make you a better person at the age of not only doing it, but at the age of 17 or 16, 17, 18, wherever that
yep,
time period is, probably the hardest time to even speak to a male,
yep,
when testosterone is through the roof.
yep,
All guys want to do is either play sport, fight,
yep,
get into trouble. So, like, just to do that, that's two amazing people
yep.
that have come
They
into your life.
basically, so Jess has she has an older brother and an older sister. Um, and pretty much it was like they just wouldn't take my shit at all. It was like all the stuff that I would do, they'd just be like, you know, well, you think that's going to work?
Yeah.
You think that's going to, you think that's going to stop us from caring about you? And I was just like, so it was just this very much, it was like, they were tougher.
Mm.
It was like, oh my gosh, okay, all my stuff that normally in the past I would do to keep people out
Mm.
wasn't working.
Do you think before this stage, did you think doing the things that you were doing, fighting and things like that, was for attention of your mother, or to like try and get them to like care?
Um,
Or did you was it purely, do you feel like it was you expressing yourself at the time on how you were feeling?
it was a goal. It was a goal. I had a plan. I wanted to go out fast.
Young age.
Yep. I had set myself a goal of 21. I went by 21. I don't want to be here anymore.
And
And
that
it was,
stopped at
yeah.
when
Yeah.
you moved in?
I wrote just a letter, yeah,
Okay.
saying that I was done, and they came and got me.
Was that at 21?
No,
What
just
age
before,
was that?
about 18.
So
Yeah.
that was at 18.
18, 19. Yeah.
Okay.
And then I moved in there full time.
Mhm.
I dropped out of school because I was just, when I'd go there, it was just too hard. I was too
Yeah.
angry. I'd see people who would put on these personas of being, this thing that I knew they weren't.
Yep.
And I went to work with Jess's dad.
All right. So moving on to that. What was the job?
Floor tiling.
How long did you do that for?
On and off for 10-ish years, I'd say. Yeah.
So that took you to what, 28?
Yeah, yeah.
Did you enjoy it?
I did. I loved it. It was like for for whatever reason, it was a trade that I was able to feel like I was still creating something. It was like, because that was very much still a important part of me, but people didn't like my art. It was very dark.
Yeah.
So I went tiling, and it was just like it was the hardest thing I've ever done in my life, to go from someone who had no discipline, who to suddenly having someone there who was in charge of me and saying, this is what needs to be done.
Yeah.
This is when you got to do it. Yeah, it was pretty rough. It was pretty rough. It
And
was like this shock to the system.
yeah,
And yeah, I loved it. It was like,
having a
it was
boss for the
just,
first time.
yeah. I mean, I'd had jobs,
Yeah.
but it was never like,
It was
as
someone you
full on.
respected
Yeah, it was.
instead of having a job with a boss where you didn't really care what they thought.
Yeah, like I went from working, like having jobs at Coles or Woolworths, to suddenly it was Jess's dad, and he was hard on me. He'd be like, this is what you got to get done. I want you to carry this upstairs, and this is how long you got to do it. And I was like, okay. So I went from being this tiny little scrawny kid who to suddenly working hard
Yeah.
and getting home and feeling absolutely wrecked, and a few times storming off the job site because I didn't like what he told me to do. And
So,
then Jess's mum would say, why are you back here? And I'd be like, da 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 da, and she'd make me go back.
so you said you did it on and off for 10 years.
Yeah.
So on the off, were you working other things?
I went to TAFE and I studied graphic design. And then, so that was about 20. I was about 20 then. So I did it for about 3 years, I think 2-3 years before I decided I wanted to go to TAFE. I wanted to become a graphic designer. It was what I was called to do. I was 100% set on I'm going to be a graphic designer. And I had this thing that the only way you can do that is if you get a certificate and it says that this is what you're doing.
Yeah.
So I went to TAFE, and about 12 months in, Jess and I got engaged. So, and I went, I need to make money. So I left, and I went back to tiling. Yeah, I went back to tiling. So it was just very much I realized that I didn't need that. And at the end of the day, I sort of went, well, tiling brings money, and we need money to pay for a wedding. And that's what I did. So, yeah.
So that was until 28. Now, where did gaming come in for the first 28 years? So, like, did you have gaming consoles growing up? Did you?
Yes, I did.
You did have gaming
I
consoles.
got my first gaming console, I think I was 10, and it was a Sega Mega Drive. Dad actually bought me a Game Boy before that, but I only ever had one game on it, and I couldn't finish it, and it freaking sucked. So that was the only game I had on it, and so I had to basically play it over and over again, and I could never finish it. So, but yeah, the first console I had was a Sega Mega Drive. Yeah.
And how constant was gaming in your life during those periods where you said you had dark periods and angry periods? Were you still gaming, or were you kind of not involved or not going down that road because of your manner?
I did. I did game, but it was sort of early on, probably until I was about 14. I would not game all the time, but I'd afternoons or something after school, I might play some video games, but I spent most of my time playing sport.
Yeah.
It was a fantastic way to line someone up and just drop them.
Put
You
some
know, it
anger in.
was, yeah, put some anger into it. I spent a lot of time, like I'd go out and I'd play rugby league with the adults
Yeah.
on a Sunday afternoon, and they'd sling me around and everything like that, and I enjoyed it. It was like therapy.
Yeah.
It was like, yep, sick, let's do it.
So was that
I,
league,
yep,
union,
that
AFL? What
was
were you
league.
playing?
That was league. I played league pretty much up until about 15. And when I was 15, I tried AFL. And we played a round robin game series through school, and the school were approached by someone from a local rep team, and they basically said, "Hey, we'd like him to come and try out. We
Mm.
think that he would be a good fit. He plays tough, he plays hard. He's not as big as some of our other players, but we feel like he would be really useful for us. We just need him to come and try out." So that was about 40 minutes away, and Mum said no.
Okay.
She wouldn't take me.
And so was that what? What age was that? 14?
15, yeah.
15. Okay.
And it was then that I just went, well, what's the point? And so I basically stopped playing sport, because it was like, I can't get there.
Yeah.
It's too far. There's no public transport to get there.
Yeah.
No one would take me to games anyway.
Yeah.
And so basically I started fighting more, and I pretty much gave up on it. It was just like, well, I play more video games.
And is that the point where video games became
Yeah,
more prominent?
yeah, pretty much, yeah. Because it was like, well, I know I can do that at home. I know that, like, I had friends at school who they would play video games. They were actually more nerds than they
Yeah.
were sporty. They were just the people I gravitated to then.
Yeah.
And even there, I got into sort of, like I used to, I mean, now they'd say it was pranks. Back then it was, not pranks, but, I'd crash the school network a couple of times with me and my mate, and they knew it was us, but they couldn't prove it. So, but we did it. Yeah, like it was like, oh, this is another way that I can cause trouble. And
Yeah. Not get
so
caught.
I just, yeah, not get caught. So, but basically, yeah, when I was told that pursuing the sport um, was out, I was like, well, there's not much point even trying to do it anymore. So I went through like all primary school, most of high school, going to districts,
Yeah.
going to regionals for running. I was good. It
Mm.
was just like I'd go into my own little zone, and it was like I can run,
Yeah.
and I'll just run. And long distance, short distance,
Doesn't matter what it was.
it didn't matter. And any sport I'd play it, and I'd enjoy it. And I love doing it. And when I was told that, no, I can't be bothered
Mm.
to take you to this, I went, well, there's not much point then, is there? So I went, I'll play video games. And I started playing Age of Empires. That was like the main game that I would play.
Yep.
I played it a lot. It was pretty much, I think, probably looking back, it was probably because it was the only thing that would run on our PC at home.
Yep.
Because, not everybody had a PC.
And
We
it was
only
the
had
easiest
one.
game to run.
Yeah. And it would run, and I was like, sick. I'm going to play Age of Empires. I'd do network parties. We'd go, and me and the mates would all get together, and we'd play all over school holidays.
Yeah.
We'd just play for like 3-4 day games where we would just, this is what we're doing. We're playing Age of Empires.
Yeah.
Hours.
So you said you didn't have many friends when you were younger.
No.
So and now you're at the point where you're going over and having, like LAN parties pretty much.
Yes.
Basically.
Yes.
So at what age did you start getting like a group of friends? Was it when you started playing sport and that's what kind of brought on the friend groups or?
So I had some friends when I played sport in primary school. Only a couple. I only ever really had a couple of friends. I had a lot of friends who were older
Yep.
in primary school, which now looking back, I know why. It was purely because I was fiery, and they'd say, "Oh, so and so did this," and I'd take offense and go, well, I'm going to go beat them up.
Yeah.
It's completely ridiculous. You know, a primary school sort of grade 6, 12, 11, 12-year-old going to fight like a 19, 20-year-old. It's completely ridiculous.
Yeah.
But I would. I'd usually lose, obviously. They were just too big and too strong. But, you know, I would do it.
No harm in trying.
Yeah, I'd try. And so I sort of had friends there, but when I went over into like high school, and then I changed schools once they'd kicked me out of these other ones, I sort of went to a school where I saw very distinct groups of people. And I could hover between all these groups of people for some reason. It was just something I could do.
When you say distinct groups of people, do you mean stereotypes?
Yeah,
like
it was basically
nerds,
you had
jocks,
sport kids. Yeah, because it was a private school. It was something I'd never seen before. And you had your sport kids, you had your dancing and drama kids, and I was sort of like, oh, this is very, very strange. How can who can I fit in with? And I'd see I went between them all comfortably. But the ones that I sort of became, I guess, the closest to were more the sort of the nerdy kids. And the main reason was that I saw the way they'd get treated by other people. You know, they'd get picked on and they'd get made fun of, and I didn't like it. And I guess that's like a side of me that's like I would defend them.
kind of
And
empathetic,
I guess so.
like understanding what they're going through because you kind of went through it, something like that, or
I just didn't like it. It was just like they'd get picked on just for existing.
yeah,
And I was like, I don't really understand why. And so these people, they sort of had to be taught a lesson that just because someone is this way doesn't mean that you need to be mean to them. And so I beat a few people up.
And you were the teacher?
Yeah, I taught them a lesson. Yeah. Again, I didn't care that people that were doing it were bigger.
Yeah.
It was like, what's the worst that's going to happen? I'm going to get, beaten up. I really don't care.
Yeah.
I've got a goal. I'm out of here. I'm out of here by the time I'm 21.
Yeah.
So
what's a beating?
Yep, pretty much.
So you got engaged at 20?
Yep.
When did you get married?
21.
21?
Yep.
So you're still tiling then?
Yep.
Still gaming then?
Yep.
And at what point were your two boys introduced?
So Xander, who was our eldest, was born in 2010. So Jess and I had been trying for a couple of years. At this stage, I'd gone off from tiling because they'd sort of stopped, and I didn't really want to go and just work with people I didn't know. It didn't make me comfortable.
Yeah.
I'm not sort of very good socially with like meeting new people.
Yeah.
Never have been. Probably never will be. It's just not easy for me. So I'd gone off and I'd sort of done other jobs. And at this stage, I'd decided that I'm going to start university because I felt that that's what I needed to do to gain acceptance from my family, not my dad's side, my mum's side.
Yeah.
They sort of had made it very clear that, oh, you're not really useful unless you go to university. You never, and if you don't go to university, you're not
going to amount to anything.
Yeah, basically. So I went, oh, okay, I'll go to university. I was like, oh, I'll study, something to do with computers and stuff like that.
Yeah.
At this stage, Jess and I were basically trying to have kids. It had been hard. So I found out that Jess got pregnant, and I went, well, university isn't going to cut it. We've got a kid coming. I've got to be the man. I've got to step up. I've got to get a job. So I'm going back to work. had no idea what to do for work
Yeah.
because I was like, I don't really have any sort of qualifications other than, working the building industry.
Yeah.
Um, so I applied for the first apprenticeship I could find, which was baking.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and I became a baker. Um,
Was this at a big company or just like a small?
a small company. So it was basically me, the boss, and another tradesman.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and that was it. I went in and I went, okay, I'm baking. And I was very good at it. Like, because someone showed me how to do something, I'd do it.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. It was very much this is how it's done. This is the recipe. It suited me.
I feel like
Um,
baking is also a creative type
yeah,
of.
yeah, I enjoyed it. Like, I was good at making cakes and
Yeah.
decorating them and doing all that sort of stuff. But the the company I worked for, it was a bit much. Uh,
Okay.
I did my apprenticeship, and after about 6 months, I started working by myself, like
Yeah.
while I'm still an apprentice. I worked for ages. Like most nights, I'd
Yeah.
go in and it was just me, and then the other guy would come in, and that was it. He left. Then we got another apprentice who came in, and it was just us two.
And what age
Um,
was this? 28
yeah,
or just before?
2010. So that's what, 10, 12 years ago. Yeah. So I was like 25, I think.
25.
Yeah, 25. So, which was like, obviously working by myself wasn't an issue. It was just that I was like, well, who's actually training me? So I
Yeah.
basically trained myself
Yeah.
for most of it. And about 6 months before my apprenticeship finished, it came out that my boss had been withholding like all super, because this was around the time that there was the GFC, so the big
Yeah.
global financial crash, and money was obviously you know not,
Non-existent.
yeah, pretty much, and everyone was struggling. So he decided he was going to withhold super and do all this to keep everybody through this time.
Yeah.
Obviously, a bad choice, bad decision.
Yeah.
None of us knew about it. Um, which probably if he had to come and said to me, hey, this is what we're gonna do. I'm gonna withhold, but I'll fix it up once we get back on our feet. I probably would have said, yeah, okay, that's fine.
Yeah.
Um, but that's not what happened. And basically, suddenly, current affair were rocking up. And there was media there, and so I spent probably the last 6 to 8 months. It was just such a high stressful environment. It was just
Mm.
like nobody got along.
Yeah.
Um, and so I'd go from working nights starting at like 9 p.m., working through till sometimes 10 or 11 a.m. From that, going home to, by this stage, Xander, who's, sort of 2, 3 years old.
Yeah.
And it was just like no sleep. I
Yeah.
couldn't sleep. And in the end, it got to about 2 weeks before Christmas after I'd qualified.
Mm.
So I'd been qualified for maybe a month. And my boss was like, we don't want to keep you on. We're letting you go. And most people would have gone, oh my gosh, what am I going to do? It's Christmas. And I was just like, cool.
Thank fuck.
I was like, sounds fantastic.
Yeah.
Obviously it was stressful because it's
Yeah.
Christmas and everything, but it was like,
More of a release to get the fuck out of that place.
it was just like I'd sleep 2 to 3 hours a day.
Yeah.
Like, and I did this for months. Like, it was just like, even to this day, I used to go to bed at like 3 o'clock in the afternoon. To this day, still like 2, 3 o'clock. I'm like, I'm ready for an
Nodding off.
afternoon nap.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm ready for a nap, like, so that sort of was when sort of, I guess, my outlook on what work has to be sort of changed.
Yeah.
Um, and by this stage, um, Jess was pregnant again, I think. So um, we'd moved in with Jess's grandparents. before Xander was born.
Mm.
And we were living there, looking like Jess was helping basically with
Yeah.
cooking and stuff because they were getting older and everything. So it was, I pretty much, I would say looking back, I probably did have like at this point a mental like breakdown. Like it was just too much.
So at the point where you moved in,
Well, at the point where I stopped baking,
you stopped
I would
baking.
say,
Okay.
yeah, I would say at that point, mentally was just exhausted.
And
And
Xander was already around. He was 2 or 3, you
yep,
said?
yep. Yeah, he was, yeah, about 3.
And Jess
So
was
he was
pregnant with
really
the second.
uh, pretty close to, yeah,
Okay.
pretty close to. So he was, he was very much a blessing, and like I love him to bits.
Yeah.
Absolutely love him to bits. But it was the most terrifying time in my life.
I would
Um,
imagine. Jobless,
as
a son,
oh
a second son or second child, not knowing if it was going to be a son or not, on the way, moving into a new house, not to move into a new house, but pretty much to move in to look after 2 more people.
yeah, the the hard thing was it was the fact that I did not know how to parent.
Yeah.
I had no idea. I had zero idea on how to raise a child, and I had fears left, right, and center. You know,
Fears purely because of your upbringing?
yeah, because of my upbringing, I was like, my dad, even though like I loved him,
Hmm.
it was like he had this side that took, I guess, away my innocence.
Yeah.
And I was like, does that mean that me as a dad, I'm the same as him? So it was hard. It was like learning so many different things, tools, how to parent,
Mm.
how to teach a child, and I spent a lot of that time working as well and working weird hours. And so
Yeah.
to a degree, Jess kind of did it by herself.
So you're
The-
almost becoming a parent at age 3
yeah,
because
yeah,
you
pretty
were
much.
away for a fair bit
Yep.
of time.
So when I stopped baking, there was all this stuff that I suddenly was like, oh my gosh, I haven't seen this before.
Mm.
Like I've missed this.
Yeah.
And I went, I don't want to miss this anymore. So I went, I'm staying around.
Yeah.
I went, I'm not going back into baking. All the people I'd met who were bakers who were sort of older, they
Mm.
were all unhappy.
Yeah.
They were all like just these angry people, and just, families had broken down, kids didn't like them. And I went, I don't want to stay in that. I
Yeah.
was like, I need to get out of that. So I just didn't look for
So
another job.
you pretty much
I
saw a
just,
blueprint of what your future was going to be from the other bakers that were ahead of you at
yeah,
the time,
I'd, I'd,
basically.
yeah, I basically just read it and I went, well, this is the path that if I stay on this path, that's where I end up. And I went, and I don't want that for my kids. I don't want that. So I stayed at home. Eventually, we had another child, which is Jethro,
Yep.
and and then it was complete. It was sort of like Jethro. Yeah, Jethro was a hard one though. Xander was hard as well because, like with Xander, Jess went through it was 3-day labor,
Hmm.
um, and it was hard as far as obviously 3 days. It was hard on her.
Mm.
She was exhausted. She never really recovered either from it. Like she always just stayed in this state of exhaustion because he was so sort of sick. He had like asthma, but it
Yeah.
wasn't diagnosed as asthma, obviously, and he couldn't sleep without her holding him at night. But he like came through that. But Jethro nearly died. Um, and that was like to this day traumatic.
I can imagine.
So when Jess, basically the first pregnancy was a cesarean,
Mm.
and so they automatically booked her in for a cesarean for Jethro.
Yeah.
And the sort of dates were always a bit like, oh, this, that, never really 100%. They sort of said this way or that way. And when Jess ended up actually going in for Jethro, the cord was actually wrapped around his neck 3 times. And I was there, and you know, they lifted him up, and I sort of saw him, and he was just like this blue. It was just like, and he wasn't moving. He didn't cry. And there was blood everywhere. Jess was just like, there was just so much blood.
Yeah.
And I was sort of standing there, and I was like torn because Jethro's obviously not breathing. And they said he's not breathing. We've got to, they hit a button, and just people had just come flying in from everywhere, and they're just packing Jess full of towels and
Yeah.
and stuff, and it was like this. I felt completely lost. I couldn't help either of them.
Yeah.
It would have been, I mean, it felt like hours before Jethro actually cried. It felt like so long. Like, I mean, it was probably, I think it was 6 minutes.
For him to breathe or just
To
make noise?
to cry.
Yeah.
It took him a while to get him to where he started actually responding.
Yeah.
Like he had no heartbeat. He was, yeah, they were definitely concerned that he was going to die, and was very close to it. And then it was like, okay, we're taking him up to, to intensive care. And Jess is like, you need to go with him. And I did. And like, I walked out the door, and I'm there going, man, I just seen like how much blood there was.
Yeah.
And I was sort of like, is she even going to like make this? Like, which thankfully she did.
Did they have concerns for her as well?
Yeah.
So there was
Definitely.
concerns.
She lost like 1.5 to 2 liters of blood.
Jesus Christ.
So like she was very, very, very sick. Like,
Fuck.
and she, yeah, it was very much like like the amount of blood that I saw, I was like, I was very concerned. I
Yeah.
was just like, oh my gosh.
That's a lot of blood to lose, and like to see when you think about it.
Yeah.
That's a fucking 2 liters of milk on the ground.
Yeah, basically. Yeah. And you sort of go, oh, that's, but once you like, it's very confronting.
Yeah.
And
It
so
definitely would be.
I was very much like, I don't know if she's actually going to, survive this.
Yeah.
And so I went up with Jethro, and he was on CPAP, and thankfully, he was okay.
Yep.
And then it was like from there to Jess, who was also not well. Like she was, like you can't lose that much blood and just be all chirpy and stuff. So it was very much it was an experience. It was definitely an experience.
Only imagine what that would have been like, especially one after a difficult first, then going into a second where it's almost nothing but issues.
Yep.
And then you split between Jess and Jethro.
Yep.
On who you're going to have to go with.
Yeah. Yep.
That must have been one of the craziest, like, because I'm assuming it probably would have been after 10 minutes in real time. But that must have been the craziest 10 minutes you've probably experienced ever.
Definitely. To this day, I've never like nothing comes close, and like that's why like I sort of I said to Jess, I said that's it, there's no more,
Mm.
and she sort of, and I said no, I said we like I can't do
Two
that
from
again.
two, we're not going again.
Yeah, I'm like we're 2 from 2. We haven't, Jethro. We're lucky enough to get him. Lucky enough to not lose you as well. I can't go through that again.
Mm.
And eventually, we like obviously we talked about it, and
Yep.
she said, "Yeah, okay, you're right." Because originally, like they didn't sort of tell us like how much blood she'd lost.
Yep.
They didn't do any of that, so it was just sort of like, oh, they didn't tell her that she had a massive, like, just huge bleed, like massive hemorrhage. And so then it was sort of like, yeah, this is where,
It stops.
we've got 2 wonderful boys.
Yep.
We don't need to risk more and put more pressure on anyone. So,
Yeah.
yeah.
So that takes us up to what, 2014?
14, yeah.
So
Yep.
2014, you got 2 boys. You're living
Yep.
with Jess's grandparents.
Yep.
At what point did you find out they were both the boys were autistic?
Not much. Yeah, not much long after that. I
Not
think
much
Xander
longer
was
after that.
4 or 5 when he was actually diagnosed.
Yeah.
Before that, we sort of suspected it, but it wasn't sort of confirmed.
Mm.
There were things he'd do that sort of didn't fit the mold
Yeah.
as far as what people consider normal.
No.
So, like there is one, but like he spoke,
Normal.
yeah, normal. He spoke super young,
Yeah.
like a lot, like 8 weeks old. He was just, just
Yeah.
dad, and he talked like crazy.
So a lot of people know what autism is, but I
Yeah.
don't think many people know what apraxia is. Is that right?
Yes, apraxia. So basically,
Please explain.
yeah, apraxia is a hard one. Jess is definitely better at explaining apraxia than me.
Yeah.
Mainly because like she well and truly delves into the full technical
Yeah.
side of it. But basically, the brain and the mouth don't
Communicate.
necessarily communicate properly.
Okay.
So it is like a serious condition.
Yeah.
And you can, so basically Jethro's had to go through from the age of 2.
Mm-hmm.
He has been to speech therapy.
Yep.
So he's now 7. Originally he started probably when he first started, he probably had about 2 to 3 words, which obviously were mum,
Yep.
dad. That was sort of, and a few other, he'd basically talk in syllables.
Yep.
So if it was like, I love you, it would,
Yeah.
that was
His way of speaking.
yeah, it was like some people would say like grunts.
Yeah.
So basically, yeah, the brain and the mouth, they just sort of get a bit lost. And the tongue can't sort of form the shapes that it needs to. So the sounds, necessarily what is expected. He's very smart. He's a very smart little boy, and he works very hard. It's just obviously, it's probably, I mean, we'd never heard of it. We hadn't so you can get like apraxia of speech, and you can also get like apraxia of movement. So you get, where they can, like, so there's different types.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's definitely changed our lives. Like both the boys being diagnosed with autism, and it's also explained a lot. Like with myself, I mean, I haven't been diagnosed with autism.
That was my next question. Is it hereditary?
It can be, yeah. It can be.
Have like is there previous cases that you know of in either of the families?
Yes,
Okay,
yes.
so there is
But I definitely display a lot of traits.
symptoms.
Yeah, and a lot of stuff that I would sort of like do is like I see Xander and I'm like, man, that's so much like me, just
Yeah,
without the sort of the bad
yeah.
side. But there's a lot of stuff he does that I'm just like, man, I'm watching myself grow up again. So
So at what point did you and Jess, because you're both full time parents?
yeah,
So at
yeah.
what point did you guys decide either as a team, or did she start first? Did you start after, or like how did that come to fruition of happening? You both there as full time parents.
We so after like Jethro, it was just sort of like Jess had become, I think, around this time or slightly just after this time, um, Xander was diagnosed, and we realized that it was a lot of work.
Mm.
And then with Jethro as well, it was just like even more work. So Jess became a full time carer before I did.
Mm-hmm.
And then when Jethro was diagnosed as well, it was like, okay, them both combined is more than
She can handle.
sort of one person could handle.
Yeah.
And so it was like, okay, well, that's where I step in as well.
Yeah.
So it was just, it wasn't, to a degree, it wasn't really something we discussed as such. It was just,
A decision you
I
made.
guess, just a path that we sort of ended
On.
up. Yeah, it wasn't really like, I guess, yeah, like we didn't sort of go, oh, this is, what we need to do. It was just how it was. There
Yeah.
was therapy, there was, all this sort of stuff. And it just is how it worked.
So
The
there
boys
basically
like,
wasn't enough time in the day for Jess to
ah,
do everything. So it's
ah,
just
yep,
that's how it is.
yep.
Gretzy's
The
journey.
boys, the boys liked having me there. They, they felt safer
Yep.
with both of us around. It was just a natural progression,
Mm.
and Jess, like after Jethro, she didn't stop bleeding because of the hemorrhage. It
Yep.
just left some sort of something where,
Scarring.
yeah, something,
Probably.
it just, so she bled for like 2 years after him,
Yep.
basically pretty much every day. So obviously she was ending up like getting really run down,
Yep.
um, which now thankfully she doesn't. She had an emergency hysterectomy,
Yep.
and that fixed everything there. But yeah, basically it's just been like, it just ended up being sort of the natural,
Progression of life.
yeah, progression of life, and I love it. You know, it's we homeschool, so our kids are at home.
Yep.
That we get to teach them, like, in my opinion, a better way than necessarily is going to sort of fit them.
Of course. I think
You know,
it's a lot better that you can also understand them and
yeah,
what they need rather
yep,
than throwing them into a school with teachers who probably
yep.
not not that they wouldn't be qualified for it, but they have to deal
There's
with
a lot
other
of
kids
kids.
as well.
There's a lot of kids, and that's the hard part. With school is, like, obviously they do a wonderful job.
Mm.
Teachers do a wonderful job, but if you get a child that doesn't necessarily think the same as the other, 18, 19 kids in the class,
Yeah.
or maybe you even get two or three of those kids, it
Yeah.
gets harder for the teachers.
Of course.
And, and well, both my kids they they don't
They don't
really,
see like the other 19.
nah, I don't think so at all.
Yeah.
Like, it's very, yeah, very different, just like, I don't feel like there's a right or a wrong way as far as like what people choose to school, like how to school their
Yeah.
kids. Very much, I feel that there's more different circumstances that fit different children.
Of
So,
course. Of course.
and yeah, it's just, like looking at it and stuff, and I look at the struggles I had when I was at school,
Mm,
with getting bored and
yeah.
stuff like that. So it definitely was the right choice for us. So
So when did Twitch streaming come into this? Because I don't think you were ever doing it just part time. You kind of just
no,
jumped in. You're like, fuck it, it's full time.
yeah. So basically, I mean, basically what happened was, I'd always wanted to. So I'd sort of like I'd done photography, and I'd done stuff like that, and I'd always wanted to sort of do like some sort of content creation.
Mm,
But I was like, oh, I'll make YouTube videos on editing, or I'll make YouTube videos on, photography or stuff like this. And um, I was never able to sort of grasp exactly what I wanted to do.
mm.
It was always just like, I know I want to do this. I've wanted to do it for years and years. I've
Yeah.
tried a few times with different sort of things, but it was never really something I stuck to.
So were you part of before you started streaming on Twitch? Were you part of some communities?
Yeah, so I used to watch a lot of Twitch, but I never really like I guess delved deep into it. I was always just sort of more of a lurker.
Yeah.
I'd sort of watch um like communities that I guess like they're big,
Yeah.
big communities, not necessarily even like based in like OCE.
Yeah.
Like more definitely more sort of like FIFA communities and stuff like that. And that was sort of like what I started watching. It was like
Mm,
FIFA communities and a little bit of Warzone. And like I used to watch heaps of YouTube. Like I
yeah.
was always watching YouTube and stuff, and I sort of I was one day I was like, oh, I wouldn't mind watching some Warzone. I wonder if there's any good like OCE or at this time Australian streamers.
Yeah.
So I sort of was scrolling through Twitch and I came across this border around someone's cam that was just bright pink and moving. I was like, hold up, this is really cool. What's this? So I clicked on it, and this weird looking fella has this massive, big, thick moustache. And I went in there and I sort of said, oh, hello. And then they
Wait, who's this?
this is Doc. So
Oh, Doc.
this is Doc.
So he was
So
the first
Doc,
one you got into from OCE.
yeah, yeah. Other than I watched one other guy who played FIFA, but I never really sort of and like I watched Mitch Robinson
Mm,
and his brother. I used to watch him as well.
yeah.
But Doc
000.
was sort of the first one that I sort of like ended up watching all the time.
Yeah.
And the first time I went in there, I had like my Twitch Prime,
Yeah.
and Doc sort of, I see you got a Twitch Prime there, blah blah blah. And then a few other people were like, oh, I bet you wouldn't use it and all this sort of stuff. And so I used it, and it was just like that was it. It was
Yeah.
just like,
This
you
is
know,
what I
this
found. This is it.
yeah, I found that it was funny. And at this stage, I hadn't started like streaming.
So this must have been early Doc.
Yeah,
This must
so
have been very early Doc.
he was playing. It wasn't playing Warzone. He was actually playing Fortnite at the time,
Yeah. That's when I
and
started watching.
it was funny. He was like, he made me laugh. He was
Yeah.
just a hilarious dude, with this big ass mustache, like,
Yeah.
and it was like, oh, this, it sort of made me go, oh, you don't have to be this certain way
Yeah.
to stream on
Mm.
Twitch. Because most of the people I'd watched, they were all like, sort of at least 500 viewers, like
Yeah.
pretty much, or professionals of some sort.
Some
And
sort
so,
of sport.
yeah, so it was sort of like, it was very different. Like I watched him, and it was sort of like, oh, and then I just sort of went, I think I might just give it a shot. And then it sort of just was. And yeah, I just went at it.
I always thought that you were a Geordie X3
No,
main.
no,
That's how I thought that's the community that I thought that you came from.
no. So I started watching like Doc first. And then I started watching Kales, and Instinct.
Mm-hmm.
They were sort of probably the first guys that I really sort of watched all the time. And then Noski as well, actually.
Yep.
So it was sort of like it was just like so when I started, I didn't really like say, oh, I'm starting and all that. I just sort of did, and they ended up basically coming through and rating me, and I went from like just sort of like, oh, I'm gonna just cruise along, just do my own little thing and stuff
Yeah.
like that, to suddenly went from that to affiliate in like 3 weeks, and it totally just stunned me.
Yeah.
And I went, this is what I want to be able to grow, is like a community that supports people.
Now,
So
you're speaking about communities that support people. There's one thing, not because I'm a part of it, and I am, but that's not why I'm asking you this. But I've spoken with Jess a couple of times privately, and she's probably told you that she's spoken to me about this, but you joining Aftermind,
yes,
previous to that period, you were going through some rough times.
very rough times. Yes.
From everything that Jess sent me a message one time, right? And I like teared up. And it was her saying that you joining Aftermind brought you to a place that she hadn't seen you in years.
Yeah. I know that like people throw family around a lot, oh, we're family, for me, that's not something I just throw around, because like obviously my family wasn't that good growing up, so it's like, oh, well, I'm not going to just like, but Aftermind was like very much this almost came from nowhere sort of thing. It was like, wait, how? Like, how has this just happened?
Yeah.
And it was like, there were so many people that I'd seen in Aftermind that I had like massive respect for and love for, even though I wasn't in Aftermind, like I'd seen you and I'd seen Promise and I'd seen like Shrub, and I was like, man, Shrub is like one of the most wholesome, wonderful people I've ever met. And I was like, I love this guy. Like he just brings, happiness.
Yeah.
And when it was like, hey, do you want to join Aftermind? I was like, wait, really? And then I got the email saying,
this was Keys,
yeah, this was Keegan. And I was like, what? I was like, but I'd hit a point where I was like, I don't know if I want to like continue with this like streaming and with like, I love it and I love doing it, but am I too old? Like, am I even the sort of person that should be pursuing this? And then like that happened, and I was just like, oh my gosh. Like it was just like I felt I'd suddenly found my home.
Yeah.
Like for the first time in years, I'd found a place that I can belong, a place that I felt accepted, people that I felt like I'm part of their lives for more than just, like, oh, screen names, more than just, oh, look, Gretzy's playing with Koala.
Yeah.
No, Chen and K-Rod
Yeah.
are hanging out. It was a family. It was a group of friends.
It's a crazy thing, because usually when someone comes into Aftermind, right, Keys hits me up and he's like, we need to make a like intro graphic.
Yep.
And we hadn't spoken a whole ton before.
No, we hadn't.
We'd been in and out of each other's streams, like, here and there. And I remember Keegs messaged me and said, I'm getting Gretzy in. And I said, okay. I just like, right. He says, "Can you make me a graphic?" And like, your graphic is the quickest I've ever fucking made a graphic for someone to join Aftermind ever.
Yep.
Like, straight out. And like, as soon as Keith said like he's in, I'm like, all right, I'm making this right now, and like we're announcing it like right now.
Yep.
And I made that graphic like 10 minutes, and I was like, fucking post that shit, make sure people like share it. And we made sure we posted it in the members section, and we're like, go retweet this.
Yep.
Because watching you, it could be the age thing as well. Like, you closer to my age.
Yep.
And it's the same with Doc. Like, the people that I tend to watch are closer to my age, right?
Yes.
So like Aussie, you,
Yep.
Doc when he was streaming, Keegs, here and there Geordie X3 because he's like mid-20s.
Yep.
All these guys are our age, and I knew that you had the same mindset as us. A lot of people that come into streaming are doing it because they want to be famous.
Yep.
They want to be rich.
Yep.
They want to make some money because they see some big streamers doing it.
Yep.
Whereas I knew that you were doing it because you loved, one, gaming.
Yep.
Two, talking to people.
Yep.
It's like two things that like I think everyone in Aftermind has in common. And I think it's like an age thing. Whereas we all knew that none of us are blowing up.
Yep. Exactly.
But we all knew that we liked each other.
Yep. That's 100% it though. It's like you see people come in and they like, I'm starting streaming and, oh, come follow me, come do this. And it's like, oh, okay. Like I'll come have a look, I'll come have a look, and so often you then see 2 weeks later, those people stop.
Yeah.
And it's like, why'd you stop? Oh, well, I wasn't getting, enough viewers and I wasn't getting the subs that I wanted and I wasn't, and you're there going, yeah, but why are you actually doing it?
Yeah.
Are you doing it because you love to play video games or talk to people, or are you doing it because you think that you should start streaming on Twitch or on Facebook or Mixer, and wherever, and that you should be guaranteed this level of viewership?
Yeah.
If that's the reason you're doing it, then you're missing the whole point of it.
100%. And I think that's why Aftermind has succeeded in the sense of our stream. Look, we've had some good CSGO teams.
Yep.
We've had some solid CSGO teams. But our stream team are all family. And not only that, their family is our family.
Yep.
Like Jess is, although she's not in Aftermind because she doesn't do anything, she's in Aftermind.
Exactly.
And that's how we wanted it to be.
Yeah. And that's how I look at it. It's like Aftermind is a family. It's 100%. There is, if there are times where you're struggling, you can always find someone that you can message. Like there's been multiple times where I've messaged and said, hey, look, this, just so you know, this is what's going on, and I get a message back and it's like, you feel like you've got people there supporting you.
Yeah.
Like I said to Jess that I never wanted to join like a stream team just to join a team.
Yeah.
I was like, I don't want to go out and chase one down and try to apply. I'm like, what's the point of that? Like, that doesn't mean as much as if someone comes to me and like 2 days later, Keegs comes to me.
2 days later, after you'd had that conversation.
Yep. And Jess was like, what? I'm like, I don't know. This is just what's happened. And I was like, that to me was the biggest thing, was that as someone who creates content, I didn't want to lose sight of the fact that it was not about chasing things.
Yeah.
I didn't want to force anything.
Mm.
I was just like, I'm happy out here playing video games, doing subpar content, having
Yeah.
laughs, meeting people. I don't care
Mm.
about being with a team or not being with a team. I said the right team will come along.
Yeah.
I know that. If it's meant to be, it will be. If it's not, it won't be.
Yeah.
And 2 days later, Keys sends me an email, and I'm like, okay.
Comes in with the goods.
Yeah, because and it's been life changing. You know, it has like
Can you
it is a.
explain
I
in
I
whatever
feel like
words you can?
I have siblings. You know, like brothers.
Mm.
You know, sisters. Like I feel like we have one of just the most amazing supportive groups of people. And honestly, if people aren't finding that online and being like blessed with so many amazing people into their lives,
Yeah.
I feel sad and sorry for them.
Well, we feel
It's
the
like,
same way about you guys.
yeah,
You
but
know.
it's like what I say, and I've been saying this a lot recently because I've seen a lot of stuff happen that shouldn't be happening. And the fact of the matter is that people need to remember that behind the keyboard, behind the screen, there are people.
Mm. I think that's
You
what
know,
a lot of people forget, and I I don't know if it's a lot of people forget or if they're just kids because and like very naive, but like flaming. Look, I do some flaming online, right?
oh, I do
Like
some as well.
in game, like but everyone knows it when I'm doing it. Like I'm not doing it harshly. I'm
Yep.
doing it as a joke, and I'm never like I'm never being mean to a person.
Yeah, it's a different. It's different.
There's a big difference between talking about in-game stuff and like going into a stream and purely just coming to talk shit
Yep.
about
It's
that
it's
person.
it's a total different mentality.
Yeah.
You know, it's one thing to be playing a game of Valorant and you're playing with the absolute worst killjoy that you've ever played with and they're completely trash.
Yeah. You got to let
And
them know
then
sometimes.
why are you playing that character? Learn how to play.
Yeah.
That is completely different to going in and attacking someone on a personal level.
100%.
You know, mental health and coming from someone who has struggled immensely with mental health,
Mm.
that has seen it come down through their family
Mm.
and battles it every single day, we need to be positive people and start to try and spread positivity into people's lives
I couldn't
and try
agree
to
more.
be there. Try to be there to build these people up instead of being the ones that are attacking people personally
Mm.
based on stuff that doesn't even matter,
Yeah.
you know, and out
100%
of the
agree.
wrong things. You know, so many people, it hurts me. It hurts me, you know, to see it.
I
It,
think as we've grown older as well, we've noticed it more and understand it a lot more.
yeah,
And I think because I think as adults we've become more compassionate,
yeah,
right?
I think so as
And
well.
and
100%.
I don't have any, but you having kids,
Yep.
I could only
I
fucking imagine what it would be like
I
knowing
think
that, you
I
know.
think it comes with having kids, but it also comes with just getting older
Mm,
and understanding that, oh, you know, life is fragile.
yeah,
You know, life is fragile. Like it, you know, it could be gone tomorrow.
it could be.
It could be that simple, you know. And I like to look at it and go, well, you know, as someone who has put stuff off before and gone, oh no, I'll do that another time, or had feelings of, oh, maybe I should contact this person,
Mm,
and then that person's gone,
yeah,
you know. I don't regret a lot of stuff in life because it's life and it happens
yeah,
and you make choices, but I don't want to be a person that isn't learning.
yeah. You want to always be learning.
always learn and always grow. And just because you stuff something up one time doesn't mean you're going to stuff it up again. Keep trying.
Yeah.
You know, just there's a lot of people in the world that just give up or feel like they don't have people around them to support them. And I want to be one of those people that can be around people and support them. I've been through so much stuff and there's so much that, you know, I hope that even one little thing can help someone. Even just the tiniest little thing, hopefully someone can grasp that and go, oh, well, if they could get through that, you know, maybe I can as well.
Yeah.
Maybe.
You hear that, everybody?
Yeah. Exactly.
Gretzy, thank you very much for coming on. I appreciate it very much. Your life is unbelievable. Unbelievable. Like as I said at the start of the show, I'd heard like you talk about small bits on stream, but like it truly is unbelievable. And the person that you are today is a credit to. I'm gonna have to give it to obviously Jess and Jess's family.
Yep. 100%. 100%.
I do have to give some credit to your parents, obviously giving you the art side of life.
I do as well.
Giving you some discipline side of life. The school that took you in, there's a lot of people that should be credited. But I think Jess and Jess's family have done a lot for you, as you've said, and they've changed your path.
Yep, 100%. 100% changed my path. 100%.
All right. Well, if you want to catch Gretzy, go twitch.tv/Gretzy. It's down the bottom on the overlay. He's live, I think, literally 6 out of 7 days almost.
Yeah, pretty much.
Right.
8 hours most days.
He's got a Twitter. He's got a YouTube. He's got everything. Go check him out. Go show him some love. Go have a chat with him. As he said, he's always there for chat. If anyone's struggling,
always
keep pushing through. Reach out to somebody. Mental health is always a high priority in life. Find someone that you can talk to. If all else fails, there's Twitch chats for people to go into and talk to. Gretzy's one of them.
Yep.
Appreciate you, brother.
Thank you very much.
Go stream. I know that you're about to stream now as well, so I'll let you get to it.
Yeah, it's all good. Love you, bro.
Love you too. Take it easy.